want to start right away again? Or do you have things to say?
I don't think we should really start with anything else.
I don't. So this podcast might be 18 hours long.
Yeah.
Just in case. So
Yeah.
buckle up.
Yeah.
So last week we did Parenting Through Sports, the first episode of our little mini parenting series, which is going to be 6 episodes.
Yep.
The one today, we're going to talk about the pressures of parenting, which is going to cover an array of topics. I think a good way to start, I'm just thinking of this now, so I'm going to pull it up. Somebody sent me an email yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good little primer for the topic. So I'm going to start with that. By the way, you guys reaching out with some good feedback on these episodes. I've been getting a whole lot. So I'm going to read this one ish. Just I'm not trying to give all the details, but basically a lady reached out about the last episode, and she was talking about the situation with her daughters playing, and she was kind of speaking to one of the things I said, how when kids are younger, there seems to be more questions from parents about development than when they get older. And I was kind of saying how that seems a little bit backwards to me, how it should be a little more serious with the question asking when they're older and a little bit less when they're younger. I feel like you can be a little more loose when they're young.
Yeah, you would think.
So anyways, she was sent a message in response to that. And she sent me a whole bunch of stuff about her specific situation. But the one part I wanted to read that kind of sets up today was this. You're receiving so many questions from parents with younger and younger players because hockey has changed so much from strong house programs to multi-level, oversaturated travel leagues. What once used to be a simple choice and path of choosing which house program is best for your kid to learn comprehensive hockey, you're now forced into navigating travel hockey very early, regardless if you're ready or interested, which carries a lot of built-in pressures for both the parents and the kids. There's a huge fear of not making a team, which would result in your kid not even being able to play, and that's a huge responsibility and a lot of pressure on parents. Parents are now inundated with so many choices and tryouts when their kids are still very young and possibly just want to play for the love of the game. With kids starting travel hockey so much younger, the pressure and mindset of travel hockey takes over, even though the majority of travel leagues look exactly like house league hockey. So that was kind of one part of what she said, which I thought was kind of an interesting piece of feedback. And I was curious about maybe to start, because we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things, like I said, to do with some of the pressures that parents feel. And I hadn't really thought of it like that, I guess, is like things are presented much more seriously when kids are younger, maybe. And because I think that too, like
explain that to me. Just in your mind, what do you mean by presented?
Okay, so when I was a kid,
Yeah,
it was you played house league. There was tier 1, 2, and 3 house league. So tier 1 was the best, then tier 2, then tier 3, and we would have tryouts, and they would tier you based on your level.
Yeah.
So they'd have the evaluators there that tier you. When I was 7, they had select 7s. So that was like the first select team of
introduction
house league
to travel.
To travel. And then the rest of the way, there was 2 choices. There was AA, and then there was AAA.
Okay.
So it seemed to be like a very linear idea. It's like
you feel that changed?
Well, so now they have, first of all, spring hockey wasn't even a thing. Now that's a big deal.
Okay.
In terms of more travel stuff.
Okay.
Then there's select teams at younger ages where there could be like a 6-year-old tournament team, a 7-year-old travel team, whatever. Then they had...
Yeah, because it's not fair.
Well, yeah.
It's not fair that the 7s get to go to play travel and the 6s don't.
And
then,
then,
now the 5s are not fair.
And then I remember they introduced AE,
yeah,
which was between House League and AA. And then they did...
So AE means alternate edition, I think.
Whatever. I don't know what it means.
I'm sure everybody knows what that means.
So it's like now then there was House League AE, AA, AAA. Then there was House League AE, and then some of the AA teams were now A teams. So it was House League, AE, A, AA, AAA. And then they just last year, 2 years ago, switched it to now there's like I think Double B has replaced AE in Ontario or something like that. So my point is like Windsor-Essex County is not very big, and we have 8 million teams, and 15 of them are travel, or 25 of them are travel, or however many travel options there are. So I'm maybe just speaking to what this lady had sent in was kind of like, what are your thoughts on maybe that idea? Like why is there so much? How much does that play into the problems that parents have with feeling the pressure to go to this team or that team when they're so young. That wasn't really something I thought of necessarily.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, like, we'll get into the topic there shortly, but that sums up a lot of the issues, right? It's like this thing where you have your travel team, but then there's kids like you said, the AE team. So I think in some centers it's called MD, and in the United States of America it might be called something else. It's like you don't make the travel team, but you can't go to your house program. We got to create something that's almost a travel team. It's ridiculous. So then this group of players feels like they are travel players when really they got cut from the travel team, which is fine either way. But it's like there's a false reality that they're travel players, or and now we got to get going so we get on that team. Like, so what actually happened is you didn't make the travel team, and it's a I don't want to say it so rudely, but it's a glorified travel team. So what happens is everything gets watered down, right? So that's kind of what
Yeah,
happens,
because
right?
we remember we've talked about this before. How when I was a kid, and even before when you talk about some of the kids that you've trained that went on to be really good players that played double A their whole life. And I remember when I played, I've said this story before. Kids like we were dying as the triple A team to get some of these double A kids to come play triple A because they were really good players. And then I remember you mentioning with Charlie, maybe there was like a turning point where you started to see the double A, the caliber of double A,
Yeah,
start to really, really die off.
yeah,
Where it was a
yeah,
huge gap now, where it
yeah.
wasn't
So
really the same.
to cut you off,
Yeah,
even though I didn't mean
yeah,
to, but I have a thought. My little old man brain
yeah,
is that's what's changed. Like, so a lot of people when they say, yeah, but now and back then this and all that shit, the levels and stuff has changed. It hasn't. What hasn't changed is that there's a certain amount of high end players, and the guys, the players that are underneath that have work to do to catch up. What happened is they keep changing, and this is for anyone that doesn't live in this kind of area, like southwestern Ontario. It could be a little bit different somewhere else. So just bear with me. But like I know this happened is they put so many levels so everybody can be a travel hockey player. Like, it's not possible, man. So and then they had all these um, yeah. So what happens? It forces, like, when someone says, yeah, but right now you can't get drafted, or you're not going to go anywhere unless you play the highest level, unless you play spring, unless you do this, and it's true, but it's not true. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, like, anyways, I don't know if you have to cut that out or not, but
No, no, because
it's
that's kind of what
yeah,
happens,
it's
right?
just confusing, man.
And
It's
so
just
it,
like you have to be a top player to move on, and if you're not, you got to work hard to get there. And they
Mhm,
create all these different levels and confuse parents. I get that,
yeah,
and kids, they feel like they're on the travel team. It's like, but if you look, you're not.
right,
Not to be rude to the kids or the
yeah,
parents, but it's like that's not what happened. So you go back, why double A hockey or your local hockey, let's call it that, instead of triple A. Your local hockey centers were so good before is because if you lived in, I'll go Toronto, let's say, if you lived in Don Mills, you played for Don Mills, and Don Mills would play Scarborough or whatever, and you would compete, and it wasn't like a big deal, and
mhm,
it was really good hockey. And then what happened is you'd have a superstar or two or three or five on every team, and then but you wouldn't have 20 or 15 superstars. And then you have that kid that now goes to double A or A or AE, is playing in that level, and he actually becomes better. But everything has changed.
mhm,
So everything has changed, but everything's also stayed the same
yeah,
per se. No, because it's the same thing.
yeah,
It's still the same thing.
yeah.
Hockey's hockey.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of start with that because it kind of spells out, like you said, the mess that is the young levels of hockey. Because you think and I get messages from people a lot about, oh, he plays AE, talking about it like it's travel, and it's technically travel, but it's like the kids, they're not much better than the kids that are in house league, you know. So now you have all these different
Well, especially
levels,
if you don't have 500 kids in that level.
right?
If you have
Yeah,
40 kids and you have one team, and then you have an A team and then a house team,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. So I think that's kind of sets a good stage for kind of talking about some of these things that
yeah.
parents have to deal with. So I don't know if you want me to go you want me to just kind of read off the kind of the topics you want to touch on in order and kind of see how it flows, or did you have a certain way you wanted
Just
to
follow
go
it,
into
man.
it?
Let's go. I'm good. I
So,
can answer any question anytime.
okay, I'll start with the one of the most common questions that we get, which is um, feeling the pressure of when to go from AA to AAA. Like,
Yep.
what age do you have to make that jump? Um, when do you think that it actually makes sense? When do you think like young is too young? And I know, just to maybe lay out the caveats before you answer, there isn't a one answer to most of the questions. Like we always say, it depends on the circumstances. So the answers that you give for all of these things are very situational and they're very circumstance dependent. But this is kind of just if we take a generic case of what typically you've seen with your experience or what you've been through, um, kind of how you made decisions through this stuff. And then hopefully people will be able to kind of extract things and apply to their own situation. But we always say this, just don't take everything we say as gospel about everything.
Yeah.
But we'll start on that one.
Yeah. So like the best way to do this for me is like is to explain how I raised my kid, right?
Mhm.
So the easiest way because he's had a lot of success in hockey so far, and and I feel like that I have a pretty common sense approach to it because I've got a level head about it, right? So
Yep.
I'm not over the top worried about him at any point in my life being a NHL player or getting his school paid for. I was never worried about that. So that never played into the role. Okay.
Yep.
So for me, he was my kid was a pretty good hockey player when he was young. Not the best in the world, but pretty good. You could see that there was a foundation that if he continued to work at it, there is a possibility of him being a pretty good player. And I was saying this when he was 8 or 9. I'm saying a possibility of him being a decent player,
Mhm.
but I knew that I couldn't even make that judgment until he was about 14 years old. Okay, and it's and for obvious reasons, or maybe it's not so obvious that a lot of things can change from 0 to 14 or zero. You're born.
Age
A lot of
zero.
things could happen up until 14, and one of the main things is puberty and body checking, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are two main things. And then after that, the game can completely change for a lot of people. And then it changes after as well. But that was the most important thing that so anyways, I looked at my kid and I said, yeah, he's a pretty good player. All right. And my intentions 100% was the bantam level, 14 years old. Okay, so you'd have so what would that mean in the OHL terms? Even though I wasn't necessarily thinking in that thought pattern yet, in getting drafted as a 16-year-old, that would mean you'd have 2 years of bantam, 3 years, 2 years of bantam hockey, so and 1 year of minor midget. So U16, U15, U14 to play AAA hockey. If you can't figure out AAA hockey by in 2 to 3 years, then you probably should never jumped anyways. So you don't have to do it any earlier than that. So, anyways, my reasoning was that I want to stay home. I want to save some money. Not even save money. It wasn't even saving money. It was like I had a business. We had a life. We had 2 other kids, and my son plays hockey and he happens to be pretty good at it. So what? What like why would I go ape shit over that? Right? So we and I knew that from a hockey standpoint, he had good buddies that he went to school with. We had friends, sort of, in that group that we could hang out with, and we lived across the street or 5 minutes away. It was easy. Life was easy, and we lived in our little community. And what I loved about it also is that when the kids would have a little bit of success, all the whole community came out. So it was like a really tight knit thing. I liked it. So, anyways, and then they had a successful year where they won um, an Ontario championship at the A level, which was great for them. And then I noticed the after the year after that the kids that were 1 year older, I looked at what the A level of hockey in our area looked like, or in the league looked like, and I had every intention of leaving my son, but in that level. But I looked and I said, I can't do it now because and it's not because it was going to ruin his career. The point of this was, I looked and I said I saw all the kids that left to go to the AAA loop, and there wasn't a whole lot of like the quality players left. So does that mean he couldn't be a good hockey player? No. But for me, it was like I want him to play that at the A level so that he can just play hockey and have fun. And being the best guy on the ice is great because you have the puck and you have confidence and all that stuff because you'll get straightened out sooner or later, right? but more important than it being watered down. Like I told the people, like everybody around here that because I trained most of the guys, they said, "Are you moving them to AAA next year?" We're all going. I said, "If you just stayed where you are, we can do this for 3 years and have great. I mean, great hockey." No one wanted to listen, so everybody took off to the AAA. So we had to go. Not we had to go because the pressure of anything else, but I looked at what the pressure was for me was I have a kid that loved hockey and had some skill, and when it was time to play or to go hang out with friends, that's more along the line or pretty much the line that he wanted to do. He wanted to do some hockey stuff. He wanted to play sports and he was committed to like a lot of fitness and stuff like that. Whereas the mentality of the kids at that age, 13 or 12 years old, was more like they're having fun, dirt bike, and that's all good. But he was a little bit more committed, and I'm a firm believer you are who you hang out with, and this is something that he wanted to pursue, and he was decent at. So I said, well, we do have to put you in a decent atmosphere.
So would the if I can kind of boil that down,
Yeah,
would it be your decision was kind of based on what is the environment that my kid will be in if we stay at this level versus this level?
yeah. It was
Did it
two,
kind of boil down to that?
two, two, two. It water the league itself just got watered right down. You took basically anybody that was a good player that gave competition. They were all gone. So to have them play, so essentially what it was after that, it would have turned into an almost like a house league. And I understand people's decision now. It's like, is he playing house league or is he playing? So I understand that part. And the second part was like, yes, the environment. I wanted to be in an environment where, and he wanted to be in an environment where guys loved hockey.
And that was when he was 12,
12,
13?
12.
12.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this two ways. First thing I want to say is, what do you think would have happened had he stayed in Double A another year, 2 years?
Probably would have scored like ridiculous goals every game.
But do you think yes? But do you think that that would have been like the worst? Would he
No,
have been
no,
fine?
no, no, no,
Do you
no.
think he evenly would have jumped anyways?
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
basically things would
Yep.
have been the same for him?
Yeah, the only thing I would have said that is well, because once he went to the AAA, the only thing that was better, practices weren't any better.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that was better is that there was more kids that wanted to compete
The
to
environment
a
again.
certain degree. They were
Yeah.
still missing some key pieces in the
Right.
league because not everyone jumped, but most.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the biggest thing is that the games were better because you go out of town and you play a little bit better hockey. Having said that, it wasn't the greatest hockey yet.
Right. So my point of bringing that up is this is a very popular question and people think it's like super consequential. And my point, as we always say, is in youth hockey, there's no one decision of when you make the jump, assuming you're going to make the jump, because at some point you're going to have to make the jump at some point. And if you wait an extra year versus not, if the kid is a good player, it's not something that's going to ruin their life. And that's the only reason why I'm kind of having you play the other side of that, because that's the pressure, right? You just pointed out yourself as the parent, you were feeling the draw that's pulling you to AAA because you say, okay, most of the good players are gone. The kids that are left here don't really seem to have that bite for wanting to pursue hockey to the degree that maybe my kid is showing. And then the other thing,
I would say the other piece that was probably leaning towards helping him make that decision was that he was, I'm not going to say he was getting bored, but it was getting less challenging for him. And that was like a big thing too. It was like he he could cheat the game easily.
so he
No
also
problem.
seemed like he was ready to make the jump.
He's 100%. He
Yeah.
was ready to get challenged because it
Right.
was like it was almost to a point where it was getting boring.
So then let's stick on this for a second,
Yeah.
because one thing that you said about it was you could tell your kid was pretty good.
Yeah.
And you are fortunate in that you can make that call. But a lot of parents either don't know because maybe the kid isn't like so dominant that it's obvious.
Yeah.
Or the other side where some parents think their kid is really good when they're not actually that good. So they're expecting maybe I'm going to make the jump to AAA and they don't because maybe they're not as good as I thought, or they don't have the hockey knowledge to really understand what exactly to look for.
Mhm.
So kind of maybe if you want to throw a couple thoughts on how to judge
Yeah.
outside of the obvious, like your
Yeah.
kid's obviously the best, kind
Yeah,
of how
no,
to judge.
no, no. That's a good question, fair question. So number one is like there was an engagement level in his that when it came to practice and end games, he couldn't wait. Like it was like I'm in, and
Nice.
I
Yeah.
care. He cared
Yeah.
when it was a win or a loss. And like he was really happy when they won. Really like right pissed when they
So he
lost, and
wasn't
not
just.
like a little baby
Yeah.
slamming
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
stick, but it was like and he would be like when guys were maybe not engaged, he would be like, I don't understand that. Like they don't care, right?
Mhm.
So that was like from a mental standpoint, I could see that he was. Now, don't get me wrong, because I don't want people to think that if your kid has a little temper tantrum when things don't go their way, that that's competitiveness.
Mhm.
You know, it wasn't like the
Yeah.
little baby thing. He was just he deeply cared about his team. Number two was he was, and I want to make this clear, he wasn't the best. He was up there, but he wasn't the best at 8-9. But you knew that, okay, out of, if I watched the game just very objectively, he sticks out like a sore thumb. So that's what it was for me. So when you're watching your kid, that's what you're looking for is like, are they a very good skater? Like, and maybe your judgment is poor, but you know who can skate. Um, do they make plays with the puck, or they just skate through people? And that's not necessarily meaning that's a bad thing, but can they make plays? Do they have a decent shot? Are they competitive? But there's a baseline that sticks out like a sore thumb that would say, okay, this my son is someone I can maybe there's something there. So when I looked at it, there's a foundation. Just like I look at, I can look at with Noah Morneau, who plays for the Spitfires now. When he played, he's a year older than Charlie was. When he played, he was really good. Like you watched him, and people said, "Wow, man, this guy's like he's the best skater. He's got the best edges and all this crap, right?" And when I watched him, I said, "Yeah, he's good and he's competitive. Yeah, I like that kid. Like you could just stand out. You knew that he was going to be something."
So without necessarily being the best, like dominating the game left and right, you should be able to find some indicators pretty easily of whether or not your kid has something there or not. But the key on that that I'll say for the parents is it's very important that you're honest about what exactly you're watching, because that's where the disconnect happens a lot. And that's why before I asked that question, I was saying a lot of parents will think their kid is better than they are or whatever. And we talked about this last week, how you get parents that are cutting up other kids saying, well, he's no good, and because they're having some success, maybe they're a little jealous and they want to carve them, but they don't know what the judgment is. They don't know what the criteria is or what the characteristics of a good player even is. So you need to try to be honest with yourself of what you know and don't know as a parent, maybe, and whether you can actually tell if your kid is good or not.
So it's like, here's the thing, right? We say all the time, you don't have like just because you're good at 9 doesn't mean you're going to be good at 20 or 16, and that's true. But it's also true that I saw someone say in the comments, every guy that I know that played the NHL was a stud when they were 9, and that's probably true because that foundation is there. That's the bottom line. So like, and if we look at in the age groups that we teach every year, you got the foundation of kids that have a really, really good base. And the best ones usually, not usually, but very, very often come up and they're very good quality players later. Right. So I look at my kids' age group, and the best kids on that team are playing in the OHL now, the three best guys. Right. So they stick out. So my point is that quality hockey, like a quality hockey player, it's not like you have to say he's the best player or whatever, but there's something that sticks out like a sore thumb. And when you stick out like a sore thumb, then that means something.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
100%.
It's like if you're looking to say, well, I think he can make it, it's not the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the time.
Yeah. Or it doesn't matter whether you try or not yet. You could wait another year to
Well,
try
you should
or
wait.
whatever.
Yeah.
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 Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's cool. So then kind of maybe tailoring in with that is so that was the pressures to jump to from A to AAA, or when to jump to
Yeah.
AAA.
And then the final thing with that would be like, now when you start getting to that 13, 14-year-old age, then I think it's time to start looking, as Andy Delmore said like a couple weeks ago, or he did a podcast with us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
that'll be out a couple weeks,
yeah,
people, by the way.
yeah. So when you start getting 13, 14, and there's hitting, and you see a commitment, like now it is the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like now you see your kid practicing, and now it's the time to. Now it's like you should start
Right.
getting in there if you can.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So then with that, now we'll start switching into the kind of the pressures of training and skill development type stuff. And kind of 2 points on that that I know parents do, and kids do it too, but parents are the ones that make it the decisions. So the first part is kind of seeing and comparing yourself to what other kids are doing, what other families are doing, um, and what's available and around for you to do in terms of training, skill development stuff, extra stuff away from the rink, let's say, or not away from the rink, away from your team.
Yeah.
And then the other part is dealing with seeing other kids that might be developing faster than your kid.
Yeah.
So those are two big things I notice um, when the kids are young that other parents can kind of start to latch onto. You can start to feel the heat because this kid's progressing faster than my kid, and he has a skills coach and works out and does these extra things. And like a lot of these questions, there's a lot of gray area here, right?
Yep.
Because sometimes yes, good, sometimes no, it's not good, and you're not reading the situation right. So
Yep.
maybe you want to address that situation.
Yeah. There's a huge thing. See, what happens is, the parents that are listening, if as long as you look in the mirror, you're going to can be honest with yourself. You're going to say, because I was no different. I want I don't want my son to be the best, but I when he works hard and he loves the game, it's enjoyable when he is the best. Can I say it that way?
Yeah.
That'd be an honest way to say it, because sometimes you'll just see someone. Can I tell a story about that? We were in I think his 9-year-old year, travel hockey, like a local travel game, and we're in a tournament, and I hadn't seen someone that I went, wow, that's a player. We were in this tournament. I think it was in Newmarket or Markham or Vaughan, something like that. And kids stepped on the ice. There's two kids that I noticed that were unreal. I always wanted to know this kid's name because I wanted to see if he turned out, because he stepped on the ice, and as soon as he stepped on the ice, I told my wife, I said, that kid can play hockey guaranteed. And he went out and he was like dominant. Okay. And so anyways, turns out one of my son's teammates last year, Chase Coughlin, played with this guy. So I was having a beer with the parents, and I said, "You played on this team. Before I said, who was that kid? They said it was Denver Barkey. I said, "Oh, really?" Like, I tried to explain. They said, "No, shut up. Denver Barkey. He was the best. No, like nothing like him, right?" So my point to that was uh, not jealousy. It was like, that was a great hockey player, and it was good to see someone come out of the system, like, and he's a great player now, first round of London Knights, right? Anyways, when you look at that, it's the point is, you don't want to be jealous. So as a parent, you could say, what does he do? So if I didn't have my head screwed on right, and I had this jealousy thing or a competition thing that my son has to be as good as everyone else, I would say, okay, what's that kid's name? What does he do? Does he go to spring hockey? Does he go to training? Does he go to power skating? How did he get that good? Like, is it possible that he was just good? Because he was like a smaller, like, seemed like a stocky kid with good hands and stuff. Like, at 9 years old, you're not learning that stuff from someone else. That's a natural thing. So right there, so if you just take that locally, and you had the kids in that area, let's say, and Denver Barkey's on your team as a little kid, and he now goes to someone that does some power skating, then everybody starts going, okay, he goes, we have to go to keep up with him. And if we do more now, so if he does 2 hours a week and I do 4, we should be better than him. But that's not the way she works, right? He was a very, very gifted. I saw him one game, but I saw him and I just went, wow. He was a very, very gifted 8 or 9-year-old kid. Very gifted. He had the hockey intelligence, everything that went with it. So when you look at what someone else is doing, it might not be fair to your kid, to your family, to your brain power to invest anything, because that's just the way that kid was. So when you're looking at the training, and that kid obviously loved hockey and worked hard at it, what he does is not necessarily what you need to do. He's just really good. Then he'll put the work in. So that's, I think, the biggest thing is that when people see that how are having the pressure of looking and not being able to hold back and say, okay, that kid's just really good, because everything will sort of even out. Now, having said that, is it a bad thing to do power skating? No, it's not bad at all. Is it a bad thing to go to a hockey camp or do some sort of training? No, it's not bad at all. It's great. It's not. It's like, my point is, it doesn't matter, but it's not going to hurt you to get extra ice, because I would assume that if my son was in a different sport or took an interest in something else, like we always use piano, I'd slap him. Um, but if he was in piano, I wouldn't want him to just practice at school and then never touch the piano again. So having touches in your sport is great. So the pressures of doing it, you don't have to. It's not a necessary, but I can understand where people just sit there and go, okay, that guy's doing it, I got to do it. But that's not how you have to do it.
Yeah. I got my example I'm going to use is Connor McDavid. We had maybe 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, just before COVID, there was a big thing with this PEP on ice equipment stuff because it was said that Connor McDavid used it when he was a kid, and he is in like some advertising for it now. And so, if anyone that doesn't know PEP, it's Power Edge Pro, which is just fancy cones that you can use on the ice. And I remember there was like a craze about signing up for these PEP sessions, and it's like this equipment was now everywhere, and like everyone was renting this equipment for like this crazy amount of money and running these on ice Power Edge Pro sessions. And it's not that it's bad. It's not that it's bad. It's good to do cone drills and work on skills using stuff like that, and they're really convenient. They're nice little tripod setups for a lot of them, and it's a good
change
tool.
of pace.
Yeah, good,
Awesome stuff.
really good tool. It's not going to make you Connor McDavid, and I think that is the mindset that people can fall into, which seems crazy to me that people actually would think if I train exactly like this guy, then I'm going to be exactly like this guy. It's like, you're not that guy. That guy's that guy because he's that guy. You know, you're your own person. And I think it's just to pull out a cliche. It's seriously not about who you are relative to somebody else today. It's about you relative to yourself yesterday. And because you can't be somebody else, you're not. So I could do the exact same training as Connor McDavid. I could have done it from the same day. We could have everything the same, training the exact same way, same coaches, same team, same everything. I will not be Connor McDavid because he is. So people need to get that in their head. If you see a kid when you're young that's just so great, or you get in this comparison game of what other people are doing in terms of training, it's not, the point is not that it's bad to do other training or other skill things or whatever. The point is, if your intention is like, I need to catch this guy, or I got to do it because he's doing it, or this is what everyone's doing so I have to do it, that's the wrong reason to do it. It's not that you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. It's just that's the wrong reason. So be careful of getting caught up in that comparison game, because you start doing that, then you're going to start making decisions that aren't necessarily the best for your situation or your kid. You're making decisions based on what someone else's situation is, you know?
Yeah, and just speaking of that, it's so funny because I always call it the method of the month or method of the year. It's the new prospect that comes out. Like, so when I can't even really explain anybody except for like maybe when Crosby came out, he went to Shattuck St. Mary's. It was the prep school, he moved away there. Then it was McDavid came out as a first overall pick, and it was the Pep. That's what made him. It's like, and I just again, I have nothing against Pep. I think I like they design things. It's good. It makes you think.
We've
It's good,
used
but it's
them.
not what
It's not
makes
that
you.
it's
It's not
bad.
what makes you a hockey player.
Right.
But it's a good skill builder for sure. There's a million variations of doing that, so it's good. But it's so funny. And then Austin Matthews is the first overall pick, and now there's a new concept. It's cross ice hockey because that's what he did. So people forgot when I had Aaron Ekblad as a first overall pick. That must be the way to do it. The way I did it with him, right? Private lessons and doing stuff with him the way I did. That's got to be the way to do it because he went first overall. It had nothing to do with that, right? So, anyways, the training, like parents, it's okay to not be 100% invested. And I'll say this for the rest of my life. I've said it all my life. Is that if your son is out there and he's got a passion for the game, and he chooses to spend his time shooting pucks and watching hockey and all that stuff, it's great. That's probably the best thing you could do. If you ask for some lessons and all that stuff, like do what you can do, but be reasonable because I always want kids to be hungry as well. And but it's not crucial that they go out and do everything and compare to others. So he's not going to fall. They're not going to be falling behind if they're involved in sports. And then playing other sports is good too. And I know no one likes to hear that anymore. I really do believe that. But it's the truth. Playing other sports is good. They're gonna probably be fresher for hockey. Um, with the training, that you don't have to feel that pressure because if I did, there were certain times, especially building my business, where if I had to rely on paying for training, I'd have to look at my son and say, son, I can't do it, man. Like I can't go out and spend 50, 100, 200, 300. I know I see what people spend, man. It's like it's ridiculous. It's like for what? Because and the other thing is this is the other thing. This is really really crucial. I was just talking about this with someone yesterday because we're talking about players and development stuff. And I go, here's the problem with all of this is, and I think we're touching on this after, is that when you play youth hockey, you're probably not going to get real quality hockey coaching. So what you're learning how to do is you're playing hockey. Is that how I say it? Like you're playing it.
Yeah, play the
You're
game.
playing the game of hockey
Mhm.
like little kids. And typically, and people will argue this, but okay, let's just say Bantam or midget age, you start getting better coaching with some systems, but you can still take those systems, chuck them out the window when you get to junior and college because it's not the same game. So all the pylon stuff you did, like you don't even know if that's effective because like everybody, you do skills, right? And it's never a bad thing to be a good skater, and it's never a bad thing to have a good shot, and it's never a bad thing to be able to stick handle. It's never bad. But the bottom line is you have to be able to apply it in a freaking game. If you can't apply it in a freaking game, then you spent a lot of money on nothing. And you will not know how to apply it into a game till you get to a really high level. Not all the time, but most of the time for most people. Because if you would have looked at my son before, because I'm using him as an example, because he's the closest thing that I have to me. But if I would have looked at him, you would have said, oh, he would have got, he's going to go in there, he's going to hit people, he's going to play the way he plays, and he's going to score a ton of goals and make plays and be on the power play, right? But he had to learn to play a certain different level of play that which will enable him to maybe have a career in hockey. So it's everything that he kind of did. It was good, but if you don't have the here's a word pliability to change the way that you play to make it a junior team work, then it doesn't matter anyway. So you could spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to be a really good stick handler around cones
Yeah,
or peps.
yeah, yeah, for
Is it
sure.
is it bad? No, but you don't have to do it. You don't have to go crazy.
And that's kind of what I want to leave the parents with from that little piece is like work within your means, man. Like do what you can do, but just calm down. You don't have to do everything and be at every tournament and do every single little thing because it's at the end of the day, we always say there's guys that did all that stuff and made it, guys that didn't do any of it and made it, and there's no real recipe. So there's no point in being stressed out as a parent about it or feeling the heat about it. Just do what you can do what you can afford, do what's manageable for your family. You probably have other kids, you probably have other things you want to do with your life. So don't, you know, freak out and yeah, go.
No, no, no. You go. I just
I'm just going to keep ranting. So go.
okay. Two really important things I want to say though.
Mhm.
When it comes to the skill development, I want you to look at this as parents, and I couldn't be more truthful. This is my business, and I was just explaining to people the other day that I turn away a lot of business because I don't want to be that guy. I never did. But number one, it's like having an agent that you need me. You need me. So if someone's telling you that you have to come and train with me all the time, um, yeah, you got to come and you gotta train with me. I'll make you better. Always remember what that actually is. That you're feeding him. You're letting him pay his mortgage, and that's fine. But when people are selling you their program all the time, it's like just remember: is it remember where the sources come from? Is it for you or is it for them? Right. So if someone's selling you all the time, you got to come out to this like it's more for them, right? And if you ask these people honest questions like your concerns or whatever, if it's always like, yeah, do more, come here, I can do this, I can fix this, I walk on water, all that stuff, wrong. Doesn't so keep that in consideration. There's a lot of people that want to take your money because your parents are very vulnerable. When someone gives your son a compliment or tell that you have a little bit of talent there, you should hone that, and I can help you with that. Like it makes people feel good or hopeful, and you reach into your pocket and you go, here you go. Okay, great. And there's false hope. And then the other side of that, I can go deeper on this, is that the younger that people are, it seems like they're more gullible, or they're more willing to purchase because they don't understand what the talent pool is yet. So the younger you are, like, and that's where the most money can be made,
Yep.
right? Is when you
Oh
take,
yeah.
it's like if you want to load up and make a ton of money, that's where the money is because everybody's willing to get better, and Whereas you take the more higher end and older, there's less and less people. So so these guys that want to load up on tons of young kids and stuff, because by the time if you're 6 or 7 or 8, those are the prime years that people invest in because they go to the spring turns, all these different things. They're investing. Oh yeah, and they got buddies and they're having a good time. The next thing you know, there's like $8,000-$10,000 deep a year, and they're like, oh well. But then when they're 13, 14, and they're not hockey players, that guy that was promising you all this stuff, or not even promising you, but that guy that was selling or doing the thing, he's already got his next 8-year-olds and he's taking them for another 3, 4 years. I'm not saying it bad. I'm not saying it bad, but that's typically what it is. Because I've seen this all the time. People invest, and they come to 12, 13 years old, and they realize, oh, my kid's like 3'4". He can't be a hockey player. He's not interested anymore. He wants to be something else. He spent all that money on what? So you don't have to do it. And then the last piece of that is the people that are always telling you what you should do, right? And I talked about this, the guy in the lobby, or that knows everybody and knows everything, and has a guy that knows a guy, and he's in the know for everything, and he tells you need to go with this guy. Like, it's the blind leading the blind. He knows nothing, because I'm speaking of one that we had here, and he was talking about how this for years this kid's shit. And I'm like, how do you know he's shit at 7? Second of all, where did you play? You've never played. You know nothing about hockey, and you're telling everybody how the world works. And it's like, when you step back and you look, you go, why would I listen to this guy for 1 second? How would he know who a good skill development guy is? You know? So like, and then I get a lot of questions like that. Like, I got brother-in-law that has kids in hockey. I've got friends that have kids in hockey, and they ask me questions like, what do you think about this? And I like, guys, like, what do you think? Well, it's good because the guy's intense. The guy's intense. Okay, so the guy's intense. What does intense mean? The instructor's intense. I'm intense, but does that make me a good instructor? On the ice, I'm intense. Um, does he teach anything? What is it? Is it helpful? Is it apply in a game? Like, people get fooled. So that's my point. So those are my 2 things. People try to take this industry will try to take every dollar out of your pocket without shame. A lot of people, and some people are very good people that they're just doing a service, and it's fine either way. And I've come to that conclusion too. Like, if I say no to people, which I do, they're going to take that dollar and they're going to put it somewhere else, and I go, oh well, right? My kid's going to have to eat soup for the rest of his life. And then be careful of what other people say. Don't listen, man.
I know.
Like, it's like the guy that tells you about crypto.
Yeah.
Got to get into
Yeah.
crypto.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it's at. It's like, how do you know? What is it? Explain it in detail to me. But people, oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea. I've seen people put lots of money into something, and then they go, I shouldn't have listened to that guy. I'm like, yeah, no shit,
Yeah.
no shit,
I know.
right?
Yeah. From our perspective, it's hard because it's like you said, it's a business, and this is why we typically don't work with kids seriously until they're everything else that we have for younger guys is like the fun stuff, the 3-on-3s, the 5-on-5, and that stuff's fine. But as a parent, it's like you should be able to go and ask the people questions about what exactly you're getting for the money that you're spending, like you would if you're doing anything else. If you have somebody coming to do work at your house, I would assume you're going to do the appropriate background information to see if this guy's a Yahoo or if he knows what he's doing. And that all that stuff still applies when you're coming to pay for a service for your kid or do extra training or whatever. If they can't explain what is going on to you, then it's so easy to get fooled, and you might still get fooled.
Yeah.
Because
Well, we can. Here's one for us, right? So I couldn't even think of a better example right now. Okay, so for anybody that doesn't really understand or does understand, me personally, and the business itself is the bulk of our business is training the kids that are, let's say, 13 and up, AAA and up, junior, pro, college guys. That's what we do.
that's our focus. Yeah.
That's our focus.
Yeah.
It's always been mine since day one.
Yeah.
Then we have a piece of our business where it is for the younger kids, and it's quality stuff, but it's more in a more fun manner. But we don't do that's not a bulk of our business. Now, I started what has turned into our cross ice, or in our spring leagues and stuff like that, right? So what that is it started off with when I started doing what I thought was a really good combination for skill development was if I can take 40 minutes or yeah, about 40. I took an hour and a half of ice. I take 40 minutes of skill development so I could work on maybe some agility, some shooting, like whatever that skill development was. And then at the end of that, play small area or cross ice games. And I started a cross ice thing at the end of that. So 40 minutes of skill, 40 minutes of that. And I really liked the progression of how the skill went. And then one Christmas, we decided that we were going to do a cross ice tournament. And the key was for fun because I couldn't think of a better way to spend a day and have a competitive, like somewhat competitive thing where kids played against each other and had a skill day. And it was zero. It meant nothing else except for we wanted to have a good time for our kids and other kids that came in town. It wasn't a moneymaker for us. It was none of that stuff. It was good. And it was busy. Well, now in this area, it's like if you're not playing in every Christmas tournament for your development, you're not getting ahead. It's am I wrong?
No, it's
Everyone
exactly.
wants to do a Christmas tournament, but it's all about making the money. It's all, and then the parents are getting so competitive, and it's like this team, that team. It's like this most competitive thing. Not what it was, guys. It was just to have a fun day. But so my point to that is like we take something that was an innocent thing that was fun, and that's all it was meant to do. You weren't getting better in a day. You played 4 or 5 games in a day, but it was fun. Leave it at that, and it's turned into the most competitive
Oh, I
business
know.
model,
I know.
and people losing their shit that this one's better, that one's better. PowerTech is the best because they give out and they got real refs and it's like it's not what it was meant to do. We give donuts and gifts. Like it was a fun day, but this is where that that skill development went crazy for no reason. It's not what it was intended to do.
I know, and you can see, man. You should see my email inbox, dude. After these tournaments, I read you some of them. It's like people losing their mind. These guys are cheating, and this is bullshit. Those scores are wrong. This,
Yeah.
and I'm getting like all this stuff, and I'm like, even if you're right, even if there were mistakes made, which of course there's going to be mistakes made, it's like it's just for fun, guys. I don't mind you pointing out, hey,
And we
like
want
this
to
was
do
wrong.
it perfect
Yeah, we want to
for
do it
sure.
perfect. It's not that we, but it's like the tone. It's the tone, you know? Because I got no problem ever. I never have an issue with anyone coming to me and saying, "Hey, this didn't work," or "This kid was just want to let you know this problem happened." I want to know that. I want the feedback. I'm not saying don't, but it's just like some of the tone I get from some parents, or like I had one of our guys working last weekend, and he had these two dads that were about to get in a fist fight in the lobby.
This is our fun time.
I'm like, who is this for right now? Remember how this is a 5-on-5 league for fun in the spring for your kids that are 9? It's not fist fighting time for dads, you know? And it's just people lose their shit. So long
I just thought it was a good example of where what everyone thinks is it's a must do, have to do this. It wasn't that. It was just a fun time. And now if you could just back that up into what other skill is it, like I think we're talking about spring hockey next, but what other skill was it? Power skating when I was a kid was power skating. Like there was a figure skating coach that did some drills, hated it. So we did outdoor rings and other things, but there was no such thing. But then once it started to get popular, it's like, oh, you have to power skate. And I question, as a skills coach and um, been in hockey all my life, I question a lot of the people that do it from an intelligent point of view, not being negative. Just like, okay, if you worked with that guy for that long, why is he any better? What are you teaching and why? Like, there's the quality is not there, but there's so much people think they have to go to all these things, and because they're a power skating, that title doesn't make them worth anything.
good or appropriate or any of
Right.
that, right? So okay,
Right.
so just because that was a lot of shit. So
Yeah.
hopefully the point that you guys take away from that, hopefully,
Yeah.
is just calm down with all the skill shit. You don't have to compare to anybody else, and just check what your intention is for doing the things you're doing. Because to a certain age, until you're 13, 14, 15, 16, when things start to get more serious, just calm down. There's nothing that's make or break. And then even at those ages, like just do what's reasonable and good for you and works for your family. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to listen to this guy that's telling you need this or that or whatever. Just do what you can do for you and be intelligent, ask questions so that you're making informed decisions with what you're doing with your money. But you don't have to lose your shit because this kid got to go to the spring tournament, man. It's okay, you know? So we kind of started touching on two things in there. Do you want to go to spring hockey next, or because you kind of also mentioned this, do you want to talk about pressure's coming from maybe your hockey center, like the
I'll,
organization?
I'll go with pressure for spring hockey.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's go spring hockey.
because I can do this one a little bit more quickly.
Okay.
So I as I say this sentence, please don't think that this applies to everybody every time. I never believed in the spring hockey thing. I stayed away from it 100%. I saw what I felt. What I felt. No, how do I say the sentence? I saw what I felt was an unnecessary thing that people were spending money on. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't or can't, or I think you're dumb for doing it. Well,
It depends.
it
Once again,
depends. This is exactly it. So,
yeah.
my perspective, and kind of qualify this. I know a lot of people have comments sometimes, but my friends, you walked in yesterday and I was talking to an NHL scout about some players. Those are my friends, not all the NHL scouts, but my friends come from the hockey world. I live in the hockey world. I was a hockey player. This is what I do. When we talk to people who are qualified,
Yeah.
like what's that guy's name? Dr. Evil?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's who I am
Yeah.
today. But I talk to people who are qualified to have an opinion that I care about. I don't care about, Tommy Tuckaluk's freaking opinion about how important it is. I don't care because this is my world, and I'm at the bottom of the totem pole of the people who I consider I take advice from or have conversations with. They all stay away. So if you got NHL juniors and the highest level people saying it's a waste of time, get away from the game, let your body recover, play a different sport, then it might mean something. So for me, it wasn't even that at that point. I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to go spend all kinds of money traveling around. And then I saw the business for what it was, the business, and it's people's businesses, and it's fine. They are allowed to make a buck. But what I saw the business is that everyone gets a special invitation, and you are identified as someone to play on this awesome team. The level is going to be. It's not true, and people will argue. Whatever, fine. But the spring hockey is. For me, like when I looked at developing my son, or it wasn't even about developing. It was just like, to me, it was like, why am I going to spend $5, $10, $15,000 traveling all over the place to play extra hockey games to pay so someone can have a nice house? And hockey's over. He played lacrosse, played baseball, played soccer. Like, it's time for that. But people were putting the pressure on me, even like, you got to play. All the best players are going. No, they're not. I know that for a fact. You think they are because you don't know who the best players are, but that's not true. The best tournament, like, no, this is all crap. So, anyways, that was me, and we got sucked in once. I said this before. It was a Christmas time, and my son was asking me, he goes, Dad, why don't you ever just? I want to go to one. I said, you ain't going to one. You ain't going to one, man. I'm not paying for this. You play hockey, play good now. So then there was one at Christmas time. There's a little bit of a break before playoffs. We had like a 2-week break, and one of the dads on the team said, listen, there's a little 3-on-3 thing in Detroit. And I'm like, I'm always the guy that said no, always. And for some stupid reason, I chose to say, well, and it was only 1-day thing. I said, all right, yeah, you know what, we'll go. He will have some fun. He hated it. I hated it. He hated it. The guy that invited me hated it. Wasn't what they promised. So I said, that's why I never did this shit. Right? And even if he loved it, I wouldn't have done it again. It's not worth it. Anyways, now for the people that want to do it, here's my. First of all, it's not for me to tell you what to do, but I would say where it could be beneficial, in my opinion, is that you had a bad year of hockey, meaning maybe your coach was a jerk and you didn't have a good experience and you just needed some positive energy, and maybe this is one outlet that you could have. Number 2 would be like maybe you had an injury or a long suspension, an injury. Maybe you're out for 2-3 months, broken leg or something like that, and you want to get back into the swing of hockey. I would say there's an opportunity to go play hockey. And then maybe the other one is you just want to go out and play with some friends. Like, so here's the difference though, right? Is if your goal is to be a hockey player and you have the skill thing, you don't need to do it. If you're just out to play fun and right, if you're just a kid that plays hockey and loves to go, and you're not putting a consequence or an end result on your hockey, then go. That's your sport.
Yes. We're back to the intention thing,
Yeah.
right? And to your point, I've never actually told you this, but I did spring hockey 2 summers.
Yeah. That's
I
why I
did.
don't like you.
Yeah, I know. So, and I actually forgot about this until you just said it.
Right.
But the first summer that I did it, because my dad was like you, he was like, "You play baseball. We don't have to do this shit. You don't whatever." So the one year I had a tough year in AAA where I don't remember exactly what made it a tough year. It might have been the coach was a goof because I never had good coaches when I was in AAA, and I just didn't have a good year and wasn't loving hockey. And my dad, for that reason, because there was a couple years before that too where I remember asking him like, "Can I do spring hockey? Can I do this? Whatever?" And he was no, no, no. And after this one year in particular, I don't think I know that was the motivation for him to do it was let's get you feeling good about hockey again. That's why we're going to do this, not because there's going to be NHL scouts there. So I went, and the guy that was the coach, I don't even know if he knew anything about hockey. I don't think he actually did, but he was really good with me personally. He knew how to get some extra juice out of me, and it was nice hearing somebody else that's not dad like running down my throat about hockey stuff. And this guy was a little bit more gruff. He didn't know much about hockey from what I remember.
Yeah.
Now looking back,
Yeah.
at the time he knew more than any coach I ever had.
Yeah. So you
But
think, right?
so I think. But he knew how to get more juice out of me when I was playing, and I would do a couple tournaments, and I felt way better about hockey for the most part after doing those things. So to your point, it's not that you can never do it ever. It's just what is the intention behind why you're doing it. And we hear parents time and time again, you need to get them into this tournament. We're going to go to Quebec for this tournament. We're going to go to the Brick tournament. We're going to go. And it's because they think that this is where all the future stars go. And it might even be true that a lot of guys that end up being good hockey players went to that tournament. Maybe that's even true. But that's not the only good players or the only guys that made it or whatever. So it's what is the intention of you doing the thing you're doing? And if you can afford to do that, if you can afford to fly all over the world and do spring tournaments, go for it. More
Yeah,
power to
you
you,
do
man.
whatever. Like
Do whatever
that's
you
what I'm
want.
saying. Do whatever you want. But I'm just
It's
like, we're
why.
asking the question is the pressure to do it. It's like it's not a necessary thing at all. And then like for me, the side part, like the most important part, especially for kids, like yeah, actually for parents too. I think, like if when we were as a family investing, and it might not seem like a lot of money to some people, it might seem like a ton to other, but when you invest at a AAA level, uh, uh, 10 to 15 to $20,000 so your kid could play hockey, I want that 5, 6, 7 months of hockey to be his best hockey. That's a lot of money and a lot of time and sacrifice. So my expectations are you are going to work hard and you're going to be hungry for every game and practice to get better. Not to go and spend another 20 because the season wasn't, he just, we're going to spend more money now. Right. So I wanted him to be hungry for the next season. But for him to go from playing, or any kid to go from playing a season where they were actually dialed in and they worked hard to play 2 months of like ridiculous amounts of hockey games in spring hockey and spending that money, it takes away that hunger because then you come back and do skill development. It's like you're never off the ice. So I want my hockey player to be hungry to get on the ice so that when September rolls around to March, April, he's dialed in and he knows he's got a limited time to be the best that he can be. There's a big thing to be said for that.
Yeah.
You know?
Um so the next one was talking about um, pressures coming from your hockey center or the organization. So this would cover, and this is like a bucket of common questions we get. What if my team sucks? What if my coach sucks? What if the people that run the organization suck? Should I move to a new team? Should I go to a prep school? Should I go to an academy? Should I, whatever, I have this opportunity, that opportunity? Should I play for two teams and all these kinds of things? So any kind of these issues that come from within the organization, maybe we can start with wrapping into one. If my coach sucks, if the board sucks, if my team sucks, we could kind of touch those first, and then we could maybe move to talk about moving or whatever after that.
Yeah. So like here's the thing. I just have a hard time I have a hard time where everything just sucks all the time. Right. It's like, what are your expectations? Number one. And sometimes you just live in the wrong spot because until it probably won't be perfect until we all live in downtown Toronto. Right. No, I'm being honest. Like that, because that's the best hockey and they're supposed to be the best coaches with the best players. Um, and until you do that, and then you want to play on the best team because of, it's just not the way it works. So some of us, or many of us, or most of us, are not blessed with playing on the best team who happens to have the best coach, and the board members are perfect. It just doesn't seem to work that way. So, and now everything depends on what you mean by bad or what sucks. So I always go back to, like, in youth hockey, you're most likely, if you have a coach in youth hockey, he's probably not going to be your best coach that you're ever going to get in hockey. What he's going to teach you, or what you're even able to absorb, is not going to resemble anything like what hockey should actually look like. A lot of the people that do a lot of the complaining, or the bitching, um, are people that really don't know what they're looking at, right? And I say this all the time. Like, I watch the OHL, and if you listen to mums and dads or people in the stands, every coach is an idiot. Like, they're stupid. They don't know what they're doing. They should all be fired. Yet they've all played in the NHL, and they actually do know what they're doing. So those comments come out like the coach sucks. It's like, well, no, not at all, right? So, anyways, for age appropriate, you might have a coach that doesn't know much, but it's okay. What I think, and we talked about this recently, is what does suck is when a coach is a bad person, right? And I think and if he's not a bad person, I think that coach is probably somewhat approachable through, maybe you have team liaisons, I think they're called. Maybe you can we just talk like, hey, can the coach tone down his swearing, or can he, the concerns are that he, whatever the concerns are, you can maybe be approachable. So, anyways, I would say stick to things. Coaches change every year, but if he's a bad person, then you can maybe look at, yeah, getting out.
Well, this is my the example that I give people is, if you remember when you went to school, how many good teachers did you have? And the answer is maybe two or three or whatever. Most of your teachers were either average to the point of nothing memorable about them, or not good. And that's just the reality of, and coaches are teachers. That's what it is. So the odds of you having a great coach are not good. So if you're lucky, like for me, I look back at my hockey career and I have one coach that I thought was a really, really good coach. And then I had one other coach who was like fine. I didn't particularly like him, but he was a fine coach. All the rest, I started playing hockey when I was 4, right? Every other coach, actually no, there was one other guy that was good too because he was a good person. But every other coach was not good. I have Not only were they not good, they were actually bad. I remember them like, you are actually a horrible coach. You're a horrible coach. And that is the reality. And that's what happens when you have teachers. So maybe that's something that most people can relate
Yeah,
to if they didn't play a lot of
yeah.
hockey or whatever. It's if
Funny,
you're
it's a funny point that you just made there, though, and I've said this to a couple people. You know, if your if your hockey coach, teachers, this is my experience, anyways. A lot of people do not put as much pressure or judgment on their teachers as they do as their hockey coach. I'm being honest, man. Like, I'm a dad, right? So I've been through this several times. It's like, yeah, yeah, whatever, or they're pissy with them, but they don't talk to the about their teachers, like, or not even that concerned about school as they are in the kids hockey, as the kids hockey. It's amazing to me because everybody talks that school is the most important thing. If you don't have a good school, you don't get to play hockey. But a lot of it's just talk. It's funny, man.
it's mostly
Yeah. So
talk.
when you're judging your hockey coach, you're actually judging your teacher on that at the same level, right? The teachers are getting paid, by the way. So, and I'm not saying all teachers are bad, but it's like I've had some experience with a lot of them.
Well, and that's the point. Like that's a very fair comparison, you know. So if you think, okay, this coach sucks, I'm out of here, the odds of you going into another situation and having a way better coach are not very good. You're probably, if it's the same level, if you're 10 years old and you're going to jump from one AAA team to another or one AA team to another, it's probably going to be pretty similar,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
the thing is that, like, and so we'll just conclude the boards and, like, the organizations and all that stuff with this is like, it's not, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better, right? So what you think is, when you look at another team and the coach seems to get along and all that kind of stuff, like, that might be true and it might not. As maybe he's a really good X's and O's guy and the kids are learning some hockey stuff, but he's a total goof to the kids or bad to the parents. Or, yeah, you can play for my team, but I need $5,000 from you, right? That stuff goes on, right? Or you don't have that, but you got the guy that's a hockey dad, that's the coach, and he doesn't have a whole lot to offer. Like, no matter what you do in youth hockey, And even if I like go to the best organizations, you might say, well, I'll just pick my buddy. Let's say my buddy Jim Sandlak. Okay, he's a great guy. He's an NHL guy, right? So let's just say he's used to coach youth hockey. So everyone would assume, well, I got you play for Jim Sandlak. He's going to be the best. He's my buddy. I'm not cutting him up. Um, so how do you know? What makes him? Maybe he's an ass. Maybe all he cares about winning, or maybe all he cares about is his kid.
Yeah, just because on
Maybe
paper
maybe
he has
maybe he
the
wants to be Joe Bigwheel and doesn't give two shits about the thing, and so it doesn't matter, man. If you and maybe he's a terrible hockey coach, which he wasn't, but maybe he is. I've seen that a lot of times. So you sometimes you just like in youth hockey. This is what I would say in general, not all the time. In general, youth hockey, they're youth hockey coaches for a reason because they're youth hockey coaches. They're not professionals. You're going to get what you get. Well, the best thing that I can say is, or the best thing you can hope for is that you got some good people, that your kids have some fun and learn a little bit of hockey, let them play a little bit, not freak out. And I mean, if you have that, that's to me, that's what youth hockey is.
Yeah, I agree. And if the coach isn't optimal, it's unless to like you said, unless they're a bad person, it's a bad environment where, and that's for you to judge where you draw those lines. But for the most part, how about let's learn to deal with situations that aren't optimal?
Yeah,
Because
that was my next point.
right,
Exactly.
because most of the situations that you're going to face with coaching and with in anything at work, if whatever, it's not going to be optimal, man. Unless you start a business that becomes extremely successful and you're the CEO and owner and you get to do everything you want all the time, then it's like being the first overall pick. The only person that had the best ride ever is Aaron Ekblad. Everyone else is disappointed because it could have been a little better. It could have been a little more optimal. So instead of, again, the caveat, unless it's a bad person and an unsafe environment or there's something actually damaging, how about our default mode should be, let's deal with the problem. Let's learn to battle the adversity. Let's come up with a communication strategy to deal with this with our coach instead of let's pick up and run away,
That was one of the best things I did for my kid because it served him well once he got to the OHL. And I've shared this with a lot of families to do the same, and they some of them say, guy's a goof, but when Charlie had an issue, it wasn't an issue, but it was they I don't want to go, it wasn't anything bad. They wanted him to play a different position, and they left it up to him. And he said, "Can I just think about it?" So he went back and I said, "Well, you called him." I said, "I'm not going to call them. You're 12 or 13." I mean, but yeah, 13. Call them and tell them how you feel. Like you want to have a meeting and discuss it. Says, okay. So it was a big courageous call for a 12-year-old. The coach, could we talk about it in a meeting? Yep. So we go to this meeting, you're doing the talking. I'll stand there with you. You're talking. So he went in there and explained, okay, this is why I want to do this. Because. And they were like, okay, cool. 4 grown ass men. He was trembling.
Oh yeah,
I was so proud of him.
sure.
But that served him well because at the OHL, when he has an issue or, it's not, calls his agent and says, my wipe my ass.
Yeah.
My diaper's full. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I got to clean my diaper, man. Right? No, really. Like, I got to do it myself.
Well,
because you become a man.
and
So the little bit,
No,
bit
go.
of adversity, a little bit of giving your kids some, I was supported them. I was with them, but I said, you're going to have to do the talking. And then if it gets stupid or out of hand or uncomfortable, I can help you. So he did that. And then, it helps. And then I've had other people that did it and they said, yeah, this guy just basically said, don't talk to me about it. It's none of your business and stuff. I said, okay, now you know what you got. But sometimes the negative could be a positive.
Yeah, and I think if we zoom out, for me, who's not a hockey player, my parents did all that same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
More or less, it was figure it out, Eric. We're going to support you, but figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll be there to talk you through it and help you and support you and do all the good parent stuff because my parents were great. But it was like, let's deal with this. Yeah. And now that I don't play hockey anymore, guess what I have really good skills with? And that is the benefit that's going to happen for most of your kids if you can teach them these things because they're not going to be hockey players.
It's okay if life isn't perfect. And I'm not being a tough guy here. I'm not trying to tell people, hey, just relax your kids. But it's okay. It's okay to have your kid have someone that's doesn't like him as much as you do. I think we've experienced that with my son.
Yeah.
I think we have.
Everyone has, man.
Yeah.
It's a normal thing.
No, but I'm being like, we just didn't make a big deal of it. Like, it bothered my wife. I don't think that, like, our kids are real nice, lovable kids. Like most people like our kids. And it's been maybe once or twice where it's just like maybe it was the kid had confidence. Maybe the kid, whatever reasons, it just seemed like I don't know if that person loves my kid as much as I do,
Well,
and it's okay.
yeah, because
It's okay.
the better there's this is another point too, just to get on another little tangent, is the better your kids are doing, the better people they are, the more success they have, the more arrows that are coming their way, man. And so it's like as you get tougher, you need to get tougher because you're just going to be getting more shots. But it's not better to hide from that, you know? It's not better to try to stay away from any kind of adversity because then you're just weak and that's not great. So it's like the more success you have, the more people are going to be gunning for you, meaning the more you're going to have to thicken the skin up further, you know, to deal with it. And that's better. You're better off for that because the alternative is worse.
Yeah, and dude, you know this, but if you actually want to be a hockey player, like actually, mom and dad you would like your son to be a hockey player. You pretty much, if you're going to survive, you need to have skin like a rhinoceros, because things will be said to you, and you'll be exposed in certain ways about how lousy of a hockey player you are, how shitty you are, how much of a wussy you are, all these different things, or called out in front of your team about one mistake, and a coach might go on it for an hour and a half, and you'll feel about that big. And if you don't have any crust on you, you will not
Yeah,
last. You'll
you're
never
out.
get there if you don't.
Yeah, you'll crumble for sure.
Yeah.
So the next one I wanted to go to another popular one to revisit is the agent thing. So, um, first, people ask commonly, do I need to get one? When do I need to get one? Will they help my kid get noticed, scouted, promoted, whatever? And then maybe within that, we can actually talk about again, which we've done, is what are they for? Before you go, I want to tell people a story. Um, the promoting thing is what I want to touch on first. So a lot of people think that you get an agent because they're going to promote you, or you get an advisor because they're going to promote you. And there are people that call themselves agents, advisors, whatever, that you are paying them for them to promote you. That happens. That isn't the intended purpose of the job, though. So, because had a conversation with an advisor who he does promoting, and that's fine that he can do the promoting because that's what his service is for, the promoting. But that doesn't mean that's what the actual job was initially intended for. So when we talk about agent stuff, we're talking about is the agent's actual job when agents started being agents. That's what it's for. So there are people that blend these things to be other things, but that doesn't mean that's what an agent is or what they're for. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing that I wanted to say, this was an interesting conversation we had yesterday. We were talking about understanding how good your kid actually is before you think that they're good enough to have, you know, one of the best agents in the world, or these people going out and promoting you without you being at a baseline level. So I just want to do a little thought experiment that we did yesterday. So we were talking about for the kids that got drafted or didn't get drafted, and they were saying this is bullshit, that's bullshit. We were kind of talking about how many good players there are out there and what the selection pool is like. And so I just want people to think about this before we get into the agent stuff, is if you started to combine some of your teams, your local AAA teams, within, let's say within a 2-hour drive, would your kids make that team if there was only one now? So the example I'll give for our area is we have Windsor and Sun County, our two AAA teams locally. If we combine Windsor and Sun County, that means half the kids that are currently playing AAA would no longer make AAA. Is your kid one of those kids? If we go to the next...
And be honest.
But even if you're not, let's say you're not, and you give your kid the benefit of the doubt. Now we combine the next AAA team up, which is Chatham. Does your kid now make that team? So now we're combining 3 AAA teams. Does your kid make it? If we take the next AAA team, which is Sarnia, let's say.
Sarnia
or London. Let's go with Sarnia first. Now that's 4 AAA teams within 2 hours. Is your kid making that team? If you take the next one, so if you still think your kid is on that team, now let's go to the next one. We'll go to London, and we combine London with those.
London
now
and
there's
Elgin.
5.
Yeah.
Without even getting to Elgin yet.
Yeah.
We just get to London. Combine 5 AAA teams, Elgin would be 6.
Yeah, so if you're a centerman, are you the top 3?
Right. if you're a centerman, are you one of the top 3 centermen from where we live to London, Ontario? So if you're not, we're talking you're not one of the top players within a 2-hour drive. When we put things in the context of the draft, Ontario is very big, and you get Michigan, and you get Ohio, I think, right?
Oh yeah, you got Pennsylvania,
So
you get
so if
New
we get
York,
so if we get Ohio, Michigan, Ontario
yeah,
for the
Florida.
OHL draft, and you're not one of the best guys from here to London, you wouldn't even make that AAA team. Then let's reevaluate how good you actually are when we start talking in the context of getting promotion services, and is the draft bullshit, and how much is politics actually playing into this and those types of conversations. Because when we start to talk about agents, that starts to bring in all of those topics, whether it's the agent thing or the politics thing, or this is bullshit, that was a favor, look at this kid that got drafted, he shouldn't have got drafted, and those types of comments. So before you get there, maybe do the thought experiment of combining just the AAA teams close to where you live. And is your kid one of the top players? Because there's orders of magnitude more players than that these teams are looking at. So it's just that's just a baby slice of what they look at just in your own league within driving distance. So I wanted to put that out there because that was a cool conversation we had yesterday. And now
Well,
you can
it's
jump into the
amazing,
agent thing.
because people are so they're so flippant about how like it's easy. Apparently, it's easy, or apparently my kid needs an agent. That's why he didn't get drafted. Or apparently, um, should be drafted in the top 3 rounds. It's like when you actually look in the mirror, and this is what's like. This is not to be negative, right? This is to be like when you're evaluating, truly evaluating the best that you can as a parent or as a player. And I told this to my kids the other day. I said, you got to look in the mirror sometimes. Just ask yourself the question, right? What am I doing to stand out? What makes me better? Whatever. So when you look at this as a parent or a kid, and you say, if there was, like we said, take your local area and you take whatever teams are around there and say if they had to pick, because in youth hockey it's 3 lines 6D. If they had to pick, or two goalies. They had to pick, cut it in half and really look at the roster and say, am I on that team? And they add another team or whatever, am I on that team? Being honest, then you might sit there and go, I probably don't need an agent, or yeah, you know what, I'm actually really good. Let's go. So like even for a parent's investment purpose, right? You look and you go, no, like actually, he I think he's up there. Okay, then that's another way to make a judgment for investment. So now, when it comes to an agent, what is an agent? An agent, from where I sit, is a person who represents a player. What that person does is he says, Eric, I would like to, I recognize you as a player that can make me a lot of money. That's what it is. Because I don't want to work for you for free and be on the phone and talk to people and all that stuff. I want to make money from you. So I'm not going to talk to you if you're not one of the best players. That gives me a chance where I think you can make $1 million or $10 million, where I can get 3% of that, or 2%, or 5%, or whatever it is, a fee. And if you make 100 million, that's even better. So that's who I want. So if I look at you and I think that maybe you can play in the OHL, or maybe you can get a scholarship, there is no money for me to invest in you. So I'm not doing that. It's a waste of my time. So if you're going out looking for an agent, probably not the you're not the guy. But that doesn't mean you're not going to ever get one. But anyways, if you look at what the role is they want to make money. That's the job. Make money off of you. Okay. Now that's not all bad. I'm not saying that all negative, because so with me, or with my family, and when I had an agent and stuff, I just was clear of what the roles were. I knew that, like, an agent isn't, their job is not to promote you. It's not to tell everybody how great you are, because if he calls Dale Hunter or Mark Hunter from the London Knights and says, "Yeah, this kid is the best. Like, you need to take him," and they go, "Yeah, but we don't think he is." Like, they're right. You're wrong. You're the agent. You're the salesman. You're the, like, so promoting them doesn't help at the OHL level or NHL level. But where they are good, what they are used for is for the business side. The business side is contracts, dealing with the general manager, or dealing with the general manager on the business side of your career. So like if I was really, really unhappy and I don't want to talk to the coach myself or it got out of hand, like you, I mean, as a player, then and there's good time and place to do that. Like for me with my son's team, I have a decent a very good relationship with the general manager, and I don't want to be the hockey dad that's a pain in the ass. And I don't talk to him about all that stuff. But if there was a business issue with my son, but he's old enough now, he can make that decision. So I'm talking the first year or two. Then I would rather the agent do it than me because I don't want to ruin a relationship over business, right? So he takes care of that. Same with the players. You let your agent take care of certain things, but the agent isn't there to get you more ice time. A lot of people say yes, they are. No, they're not. That's your job as a player. Your job is to get recognized. Your promotion is the way you play. If you want more ice, you have to go earn it, and that's what it is. The agent is there to do the business side. That's it. That's all. What's the business side? It could be commercials. It could be endorsements. It could be contracts. It's the business side of it. The hockey side is up to you. They're not there to make calls and pave a way for you to have an easy life. The other side of an agent, or what you were describing before, is for the people that, which they call in college advisors. And I understand to a certain degree how this works. Um, because if you're not a top agent, you're trying to make your mark. So what these guys do is they'll charge a fee for you, Eric. Like, okay, you haven't been drafted, or you were drafted in the 15th round or 14th round, like a later pick in the CHL, but you want to get to a higher level and you feel like you could. So you don't want to send out your own videos and do your own calls. So I'm going to hire me. You're going to hire me to make those calls for you and tell everybody, try to find a fit for you. And I don't want to do that for free. So you're gonna give me $5,000, $3,000, whatever it is. I'm gonna make all these calls for you, and maybe something will stick. Maybe it won't. But the bottom line on that side, if you're not good at hockey, it doesn't matter. There's a base level of skill or hockey. Like if a scout came to watch a game, they would be able to say, yeah, okay, yeah, I would be interested in him. Or if they watch video, not highlights. Highlights are different. That's only your good parts. If they saw your game, they could sit there and go, yeah, okay, I like it. But if you're not at that base level of potential, size, whatever it is, then that guy's no good for you either. So my thing is, agents are people. In my opinion, have the wrong idea of what an agent is. It's not a promoter. Your play is your promotion. Your day to day play is your promotion. How you behave, how you act, but how you are as a hockey player is your promotion. The agent is there to do the business side.
So I want to hammer the difference on those two. So when we're talking about the agent, this is somebody who will take a percentage of your contract when you finally make money at the job.
Yeah, take
You're
all the
not,
sexiness out.
yeah,
That's what it is. They're going to take 5% of your income.
Yeah, they're
or
not
3.
they're not taking an upfront fee if they're a real agent or real agency. If you go another way, if you go towards the advisor route, where now you're paying a fee for the promotion part, that's a different job. That's not the same thing. So people will blend those when they talk about it, and then they will argue with us. Go,
Yeah. So, and he could make 300 million phone calls a week.
mm-hmm.
If you're not good enough, that's not his
Right.
fault.
And I know,
you
and
still have to be good enough player.
yes, and this is what I was, because I was talking to one guy in particular about this, and I was saying to him, you, even with the promotion service that you're providing for a fee, if you don't think the kid's good enough when he sends you the clips, you're going to say no, right? Because you can't there's nowhere for this guy to go. So if you, normally what happens is there's a kid who's like a borderline kid, like you said. Maybe he got drafted late, maybe he didn't get drafted at all, and he's a pretty good player locally, junior, whatever, and this guy's going to go hunt opportunities for you. That's fine. I'm not saying there's an issue with that, but that's not the same job. Those are different jobs.
Yep.
So
totally different.
So people will blend them, because maybe for certain advisors it's like, yeah, you pay me this fee and I'm going to take a percentage of your contract later if you get it. Maybe they blend the jobs, but they're different jobs. They're distinct things, you know? So if you're somebody who runs a service like that and you blend them, that's fine. I'm not saying that's an issue. I'm just saying those are different jobs and you're bringing them together to be one thing, but they're different roles. So for people that talk about agents in terms of the promotion thing. If you want to go pay for a promotion service, you can go and do that. That's fine. And for some people, it's helpful. I'm not saying it's not helpful, but there's still a baseline where you have to be good at the game, because the NCAA schools aren't just going to take a kid because somebody called them about him. You know, OHL teams aren't just going to take someone because they got a
Well,
phone
they're only
call.
looking for one
Yeah,
or two
yeah,
guys.
yeah. I know.
They
So
want the
maybe,
best one or two guys.
yeah, if you call and you're actually good and they send clips and whatever, and they're like, oh, okay, this guy's actually good, we'll go see. That's the best case scenario of those promoting kind of services, right? So they're gonna go take a look now because maybe this person you paid turned them on to the fact that you exist when maybe they hadn't seen you yet, right? Maybe you're, like I said, one of those middle of the pack guys that isn't such a standout that you're dominating and they'll come find you right away no matter what, even though maybe they would, but maybe they didn't this time, and this guy just turned them on to you. That's fine, but that's a different thing.
So there was one. So I'll give you an example. This is like the typical story. I think you were around for the phone call yesterday. Someone asked me if they could just. Someone in Toronto that thought they were getting drafted didn't get drafted. Had a text. Would you be able to talk to him for me? I said, yeah, I can. I can talk. Sure, no problem. I'd love to help your kid. So they thought they were going to get drafted. So before this, and I haven't talked to the kid yet. So I said, well, I know everybody in the OHL. I'll call one or two guys. So I called one of my GMs and I said, have you heard of this person? Plays for this team. He goes, yeah, let me just look it up. I remember the name a little bit. Yeah, I said, just I'm going to have a consult with him probably because he just wants to know what he can do and how he can be better and all that stuff. And he thought for sure he's going to be drafted and thought he should have been. So he goes, okay, let me look. He goes, I don't remember the name, but because if I remember to use your term, man, I think he's pretty like a bucket of vanilla. I said, oh, okay. You heard the conversation. So he looked it up. He goes, okay, here it is, 5'9". Looks a little heavy. 10 penalty minutes, which shows that there's not a lot of overly aggressiveness, and 2 goals and 5 assists in 30 games. I said, all right, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he read the report.
Yeah. And he wrote his report. Yeah. Like, so that doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, right? That's what you call a bucket of vanilla, and that's not someone that the agent, like, that's what we're talking about here. The agent doesn't get that person drafted. The numbers would, or the play does. So that's the main thing. So, like, bottom line, when do you need an agent? You don't, and you do when there's business involved, right? That's it. And then you don't have to panic. If you get drafted to the, Ottawa 67s and you don't have an agent, and you went in the first or second round, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. We'll get you one. You can ask around. Like there's like this is the other side of the thing is like some of the GMs or many of the GMs have very good friends that are agents. It's like, hey, I don't have an agent. Like, how do I do this contract? They'll say, listen, pick one of my friends here. I'll go make a call, and I'm sure they'll take care of you.
Right on.
Right.
Let's go to the cost things. So this kind of ties everything. So as we kind of start to come to a close here, cost to play. So first of all, there's going to be costs in terms of the money. So pressures for paying for all the extra shit we talked about. Pressures to sacrifice time. So you have time away from other kids and your own life as a grown-up. And then within that, it's what do you actually need to sacrifice, pay for, etc. So it's kind of like the question, I guess, is as parents, you're going to feel a lot of pressure to pay for extra things, take extra time away from other kids, other commitments, other stuff that you want to be doing. And then in that, what do you actually need to do versus what is excessive and not necessary to pay for?
Well,
equipment and stuff too.
Yeah,
like
but I gotta
that.
say, there's like the other one we said was there's a social cost too. When you play, when you have your kids playing, like there's a cost, right? Your family, a lot of times your family that don't understand what you're doing, it's like, why are you away every weekend? Why didn't you come here for Easter? Why didn't you do this? And they don't understand that there's the actual cost. It's like, so you make these decisions to play AAA. It's like that's actually one. You have a social cost that comes with maybe friends that you kind of hung out with once in a while. It's like, well, you're never around. How come? It's, this hockey thing is taking over your life and all that stuff. And it's like, might be a good thing. It might not. these chip away at, like the cost of just of that. And then there's the cost of like within your own organization, your own team, with your own team. It's like, hey, we're all going to Denny's for breakfast. Like, I can't. Like, you know what I mean? I can't, or I don't want to sit with you for 24 hours. It's always like you're explaining yourself all the time when you're in this freaking game, right? So there's that social cost, and some of your old friends will. I've seen it. Like people kind of like judge why you're spending your money there, why you're spending your time, where are you going with this kind of stuff, and it's like it's a cost to it, right? And then as far as the cost to your family, before we get into the money, it's like you said, you might have other kids. So like I've seen this. So I'm trying to think of the family recently. Oh yeah, we have family actually, and the one of the kids appears to get all the attention because mom and dad talk about hockey and the tournament and this, that, the other thing. Where the other one is sitting there going, "Can we talk about me for a second?" Because everything goes towards hockey, right? So it's just something to be aware of. Is that like the hockey thing is hard because people just talk about it. It's a never-ending conversation about the tournament, about who you're playing, like everything, and never stops. Where at the expense of like sometimes people don't want to listen to you about your stupid hockey, man, right? And especially when you look at your other kids, maybe they don't want to talk about their brother's hockey all the time.
Well, I want to jump in on that first with those types of costs because people think about money. It's easy to think about the money, but you think about the other life costs. And one thing I remember is, well, two things actually. The first, we were talking about kind of the pressures, like if someone says, let's go to Denny's for breakfast or whatever, and you can't go. I remember kids who would stay in different hotels because maybe it's cheaper to stay in that
Yeah,
other
they could
hotel.
make
They found a
chili in a
deal.
crock pot and eat it in a hotel room.
Right? And I
Yeah.
remember thinking, why don't they ever stay with us at the hotel?
Or you think they're on the welfare.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's hard to deal with as a family, as parents, whatever.
100%.
And then from my perspective, you're talking about with other siblings to this day, because
Yeah,
there's
you were
four.
one of them. Yeah.
I was one of them, man.
Yeah.
There's four kids in my family. I have three siblings, and all of them to this day, like I'm the favorite child. My parents care the most about me. Everything is always
Isn't it awesome?
like it's so shit, dude. It's so shit.
Yeah.
And because that's not even necessarily true, but it's just
Yeah.
I was the one that was in all of the things that required a lot of the commitment.
Yeah.
And my parents, I'm sure they did the best they could to try to keep things as balanced as they can. But when there's such a demand
Yeah.
coming
It's
from the
AAA hockey.
scheduling, it's like, what are you supposed to do? And then how does that appear to your other kids?
Yeah.
So it's not the same. You're traveling with me, for whatever 8 months of the year every weekend, and you say to your other kid, well, you're with us, like we spend just as much time with you. And it's like, yeah, but it's not about me.
No, I'm tagging along.
Yeah, you're tagging along, right?
Gotta
And
go
so
to this freaking hockey tournament, stay in a hotel, freeze my ass off at a rink, and pretend that I care about my brother's hockey.
yeah, so there's
Yeah.
relationships that can and will be damaged because of these types of things, and you can do a lot of things to try to mitigate it best you can. But the first thing is you need to be aware that there is a cost, especially with the other kids, man. That's a really important thing to remember as parents. Is you can get caught up because now, to your point, hockey becomes your life, and you're friends with the other hockey parents. So now you want to go on the road trips, you want to hang out with the parents at the hotel, you want to go for dinner, you want to do these things, and you're hanging out, and everything turns into hockey people. And I remember even at my house, like my parents would have friends over, or we would have little parties at our house, and all the parents there were my sports team friends' parents, So it's like, what about the rest of the family and the other kids and what they want to be doing and what they're interested in and the time that they want to have that should be equal to my time. So those are really important things to remember when you're going into it as parents. Is that commitment thing? It will draw from other parts of your life.
It really is different because our daughter was a really good volleyball player, so she played like the equivalent of AAA volleyball, and it was good. It was really good volleyball, but it wasn't the center of the family's. It never was. You go away for the day. Very seldom we had an overnight tournament. You drive to Toronto, come back that night. There were longer days. You'd be in the gym, and it wasn't the same thing, and it wasn't the centerpiece of conversation all the time. So hockey's a real different animal. And then, so that's that. And then the financial cost itself, that's, I mean, obviously there's a cost there. The problem with that cost is that there's a lot of unnecessary costs. Like, so the things that, I'm not telling anybody how to spend their money, but like when people complain about, the cost of it. Like there's a minimum cost to this stuff, and then there's ways that you can navigate through and get some deals or not have to spend. And what I would say is you don't, as we said earlier, don't have to spend $1,000 or $500 a week in skill development. You don't have to. You can pick your spots wisely, and you'll be fine. You don't have to get. We talked about this recently too. Is you don't have to get the top end skates, and but we're talking about the pressures of it, right? Um, and it's just a matter of explaining to your kid, talking to your kid, and saying like, "This is, sometimes it's this is what we can afford. Don't feel bad, or this is what we're not willing to pay or willing to pay." I think the pressure comes in when people start looking. I didn't really have that, but if people look and you go, "Oh, your skates aren't that good," like the kids got pressure. I don't have the best skates. I don't have the best stick, and all that kind of stuff. One guy that took a lot of pride in this was Eric Wellwood.
Like
So
having shit stuff.
yeah, he
Oh
loved it.
yeah,
He loved it. So
yeah.
Eric, this is a funny story, guys, because it's actually the truth. It sums it up. I'll sum it up like this. Actually, I'll sum it up like this. Eric Wellwood, I worked with his brother a lot, Kyle. Eric, I skated with him only in his team sessions, and I think maybe he came out once or twice to train. He played house league or A hockey is the exact thing we talked about. He went when he was in Bantam, so 14 years old. He's got all the points in A hockey. Went to AAA, and he was the best guy in the league. And he got drafted to in the OHL. Played in Philadelphia. Now he's a professional coach. He used to talk to me. He was a cocky little shit. I used to say, "Look at my shit sticks. See how everyone's got these what are they called, graphite sticks?" He goes, "Look at my wood stick. Shit." And he would make fun of his equipment. He goes, "But I'm better than him all." And he'd laugh, and that's the truth. He didn't train. So this is how I sum this up. He didn't train. He had the worst equipment. He didn't care. Made the NHL. There's the end of the story. Don't have to do all that stuff. And I think it's kind of good sometimes as your kids don't get everything that's the best of the best.
Hmm. I think the wrap for me is with all this stuff is from the parent side is it kind of goes back to the comparing thing. It's like people get real caught up, parents get real caught up in appearances, like your kid has the best this, the best that, and then at the same time complain about the cost of things. So you have to it takes a very secure person to not feel that pressure, or not to not feel it because you're going to feel it, but to not succumb to that pressure where you feel like you have to buy this and you have to go there and you have to do this. And as parents, it takes you being an adult about the situation, and not going back to the high school mentality of you got to be the cool kid, because I think more than I mean, you can see it with parents around, like even at our spring stuff and our 5-on-5 tournaments and the way people talk and the stuff they're wearing, the shoes they have, the car they drive, all this stuff. And I'm not saying you can buy whatever you want, do whatever you want. I'm not saying not to do that, but if at the same time you're concerned about the cost of things and you're concerned about um, how much time it's taking and how much you're taking away from other things, and you have to work extra and scrape by to make hockey work, and maybe evaluate how much of that is you trying to keep up appearances or have the nice stuff or do things that aren't necessary to do. And that's not to say hockey is not expensive, because I'm not
No,
saying it's
it's
expensive.
really expensive, and I, from when we did our, we had a topic on that not too long ago, and I threw out the cost. Like I think, yeah, one of the questions on our Ask Me Anything was how much. Be honest, how much did it cost? And I said, well, it's 12, 15 grand here, and then people were like, oh boy, try 30 here, try 50 here, because where they live, and it's expensive. It's just the bottom line. So again, not here to tell you what to do. The other side of it is that would I do that again? That's actually interesting question. Would I do it again? Even if my kid didn't play in the OHL, like his school's paid for. That's the worst that's going to happen in his hockey career. He's got his education paid for. Okay, would I do it again even if he didn't have that? I would say yes. The reason I say yes, it was a very good investment, and very good investment because I was able to be a good dad. I was able to use hockey as his vehicle to keep him between the lines and help him make good decisions in life. It kept him busy, kept him out of trouble so far. And for me, it was easy to be a dad. So that investment in spending time with him and stuff in the game it was worth it to me. And some people would say you're absolutely nuts. You could have taken that 12 or 20 grand a year and put that into whatever and invested your money, paid the house, all that stuff. I'm like, well, you're 100% right. But I know what kind of kid I got. I know where he was on a Friday night. And people that maybe didn't do that, I'm not saying that their kids are criminals, but maybe you don't know. Maybe you had some issues that I didn't have, and maybe not. Right. So I knew where my kid was. So that cost, and I got 3 kids. That cost was that made sense to me and my wife.
And I mean, for me, I didn't turn out to be a hockey player, but um, I'm sure as hell happy my parents made that investment too for where I'm at in life currently and where I seem to be going and the things I've been able to do. I'm couldn't be any more grateful for that. And I know it was hard. Like my family, 4 kids, 4 kids, man. My dad was running a business just similar to you. He had a lot of demands on him. My mom running the business, a lot of demands on her keeping the family together and doing a lot of the business stuff with my dad. Like that's not an easy thing to do, and I'm couldn't be more grateful that they made that investment also, even though it was for sure difficult to
Yeah.
pull off. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I would do it 1,000% again.
Yeah. So I think maybe to finish here, the when we're talking about all this pressure stuff, I guess to sum up, I would say for the parents is go back to the intention of why you're doing the things you're doing. That's a really good note to end it on. Is what are you making the investment for? And you're always making decisions with that as the centerpiece. Like, what are you trying to do? You know, and if you can keep that as the at the front of your mind when you're going through and trying to navigate all these things we talked about, you know.
Well, I think what's great about it is that when you have the right intentions, you're not sitting there and overselling your kid and thinking, oh, he's going to play in the NHL. We got to go nuts. Got to do all this kind of stuff. I think the lessons are within the lesson, and if you do this properly, I'm not. What's proper? What's proper? But like, I can feel good about what we've done as a family, which is similar to some people that I know, where we gave the we. This is the way I would say we gave. I was able to pass along my passion for hockey. My son and I got to share that. That's what I would say. That was a investment. We got to do things, and some of the things, the decisions we had to make. If we go back through the list, right? What was the first one? AAA. That was the first decision. Not the first decision, but that decision came along, and when it was the right, we felt like it was roughly the right time. And would I go back and change that decision? Maybe, maybe not. But it was like we did that together as a family, and it was good. But the intentions weren't playing in the NHL when he was 12, right? We kept it like for basically at the end of the day that the lessons that hockey can teach you as a player can also teach you as a family and teach you as a mom and dad. And we go down to the next one, the skill development. We talk like that as a family, right? You don't need that. You don't need the spring tournament. But it wasn't like, well, you don't need it. Shut up. It was we discussed it. Son, this doesn't make sense, and he learned. He learned, right? And this whole thing is about that. And then if you do the thing and you have the talent and you have the work ethic and you do make not that you're gonna make right or wrong moves, but if you just do the thing with the right intentions and you work hard and you have the skill, and then when it if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't work out because you're just not good enough, then you didn't lose your shit, right? You still have a life, but you learned about life. And the beautiful thing about this, and you just said it, and I'm going to say it, is like I didn't play in the NHL, right? But everything in my life, and I'm not saying that lightly, is from hockey. Everything, pretty much everything. The people I know, the how I make a living, my personality, everything that I have, good and bad, comes from hockey, and that's pretty cool. So you know, and I think for me, if I look at this as giving parents advice, is that like let your kids suffer a little bit in certain, not suffer, but let them feel
Yeah,
pain in
feel the
certain
heat, man.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, like things don't go well. Like if you go through what we talked about today, it's like not everything has to be perfect, and sometimes the struggle is good, and sometimes it sucks. And but at the end of the day, if you let if you put what you can into it without going idiot, you're gonna get a beautiful thing out of this thing. It's an awesome game, and then at the end of the day, you you'll be you, your kid's not gonna look at you like you were nuts, eh? Like you were nuts, because that's a thing. That's a thing when you look at all these things. The pressure thing we talked about today. I probably no, it's fine that I did this, but the other day we had a session on the ice, and it was with kids that were in their draft year. Then most of them weren't drafted, of course. That's the rules. That's the law of life. And they weren't having their greatest thing, their greatest day. And before the practice, I said to them, I said, "You guys have a couple camps coming up, like junior B, all this kind of stuff, right? How many of you guys have camps coming up?" So they all raised their hand, every one of them, except for a couple of OHL guys that were there for a skate. I said, "Okay, practice today like you were trying to make a team. Move the puck like you want to make a team. Have energy like you want to make a team. And when we do our scrimmage, play like you're trying to make a team. Impress someone today." So I was watching the first set of drills and stuff, and it was like, okay, no energy, but okay. Went to the scrimmage and I was watching, and then I had enough. I wasn't mad though. I blew the whistle. I said, "Just come here for a second, guys." I said, "Remember at the beginning of the practice, I asked who has a camp this week?" Yeah, everyone had a camp. I said, "All right. If I was scouting a team, if this was a camp, there's not one of you would. Well, no, there was one. Not one of you would make the team. I wouldn't pick any of you." I said, "I'm not giving you shit." I said, "This is the reality. Okay. Who's a goal scorer here?" So the one person put up his hand, and I said, "Yeah." "Anybody else a goal scorer?" No one put their hand up. I said, "Okay. So why is if you're not a goal scorer, why are you guys not working hard on your back checks in your D zone and moving your feet and taking time and like doing the other things well?" And they all looked at me like, and I said, "So here's the deal." So this kind of ties into this. Here's the deal. A lot of dads that are here have said that your son should have got drafted. I should have had an agent. This, that, the other thing. I said, but you got to stop listening to that stupidity because your dads are giving you bad advice. Not one of you, based on today's practice, is draftable. It's not the agent. It's not the coach that screwed you. It's you need to be better today, right now. That's it. That's the lesson. So when we go through this and you say agents and camps and all that stuff, you could do all the camps. That was a camp I was just doing. The effort wasn't there and the hockey sense wasn't there and the urgency wasn't there. Why? Maybe it's too much hockey. Maybe they're not good enough. Maybe they were at a camp earlier. Maybe it's all this stuff combined. I don't know. But I can tell you they weren't urgent and hungry to play hockey. They're just out for another skate.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully with all that stuff, you guys can use some of these discussions we had to kind of navigate the pressure that you'll feel as a parent, because at the end of the day, what you just talked about, it's going to come down to that. So hopefully it can keep you from drifting off into crazy land. So we'll close that up here. We'll close that up on that note for today. Next episode is going to be our third one, same series, and we're going to be talking about what is age appropriate. So we're going to go through from 0 years old to 8. And then we're going to kind of chunk all the years together after that and let you know kind of what we think about what you should be doing in all respects at each of the age groups. So there's a little primer for the next episode, and we'll leave it there and continue next week.